Welcome to the Somatic Movement Summit, a free online event where you'll learn from leading experts how to embody all of yourself through the medicine of movement. Share this powerful program with your friends and family, and come join us on Facebook at The Shift Network. And now your host, Gayatri Shriefer.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy that you're joining us here today. I'm so excited to introduce to you our special guest, Bernadette Pleasant. And Bernadette is the creator of FEM and also the Emotional Institute. She creates classrooms, courses, and workshops where all are welcome to unlearn social conditioning that shames emotional expression. She is passionate about being honest with how we are feeling as a lifestyle. Bernadette, it is with great pleasure that you are joining us here today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor to be here.
Thank you. And so just seeing you, the way I see you is you're so full of life. You're very vibrant and alive. So how are you, how have you come to that, to the somatic field and to your vibrancy and to your yes in life?
Gosh, I love that question. It makes me feel effervescent. I have come to this because there have been many times when I was not this, and that didn't feel good whatsoever. The vibrancy you feel and experience when looking at me is because that's how I truly feel, and it is my desire and my passion to be honest with myself. In this moment, I feel joyous and giddy. I'm happy to be here. Sometimes I don't feel that way, and whenever I'm feeling something, I am more than anything honest with how I'm feeling. And that feels good to me, to be honest.
There is such power in having the wisdom or the capacity to be honest with ourselves. And today we're going to dive into the topic of emotions, how we can access them, what they are, and how we can move them through our body. So let's start with, what is emotion to you, and how do you relate to emotion?
To me, emotion is an experience of what the day has presented, what the moment has presented. I wake up feeling excited and joyous today. Yesterday, I felt some sadness. And to just be with whatever emotion I'm experiencing and not to tamp it down or shush it, put it aside, to not do that, to be honest with myself, I find that I am healthier as a result. I find that other people know how to relate better to me and to themselves as a result of that. I feel healthier and just more in my body. I'm basically just living the way my body is built to live, the way our bodies are built to live.
And it is interesting how you're saying that it is others are more comfortable when we are connected to our emotions, because to me, it feels like there's this clarity, like there is no this unspoken riddles that one has to figure out or try to interpret or, figure out somehow, but it's just there in the open. And it's so relaxing almost. It gives just a sense of calm and naturalness, I would say. So, but that is not something that we necessarily know how to do. So what are some of the emotions? Emotions can be very taboo. So what are some of the emotions that you find in others and in yourself that are the emotions that we maybe want to put in the background, we don't really want to feel?
Well, what I'm noticing is things that people want to put away are things that society has told us that is not acceptable. Grief, for example. There's so much grief. There's so much grief and anger and confidence even. There's so many emotions that have been allayed or pushed aside because they're just, people don't know how to deal with them. I'm often reminded of toddlers, how children Children just let you know what they're experiencing. If there's joy, you see it in every molecule of their being. They use their voice, they sound and they express. When they're angry, you know it. They don't hold back. And when they're grieving, when they're upset about something, it is very clear and apparent. And I think that's how they're able to move from one feeling, emotion to the next, because they're not pinning it up and shaming it internally. That's something that I believe is taught, because those little children, they know how to be expressive. It comes very naturally. And somewhere along the line, it gets quieted, shushed, shamed, told that that's too much. And then it begins to cease. Not only is it ceased from some external towards them, but it starts to be ceased within them. I'm really excited, but I don't want to look crazy, so I can't show my joy. Or grief is too heavy a burden to carry right now, so I'll put those tears aside. Or I can't show that I'm angry because I don't want to appear as angry. So stuffing emotions away, or confidence seen as cocky, whatever, stuffing these things away, it's not working. It hasn't worked. And so I believe in living my life differently and being an example to other people of what is possible. And while it doesn't necessarily feel, it might feel a little abrasive, because quite honestly, people aren't used to honesty. And so it does take some getting used to. So they might feel like, yeah, actually, thank you for telling me that you feel some sadness today. I too am feeling some sadness. And to feel safe to be able to come and express oneself is what I'm looking to create, environments where that's possible.
Yeah, and that sense of safety or acceptance is so fundamental in order to feel like we have the space to be ourselves and to connect and sense and express our emotions freely. So what I'm hearing, listening to you, is freedom. When I hear you, the way you are speaking about how we can just be in contact with the fullness of our experience, our somatic experience of the present moment. So how important do you think that the somatic and embodied skill or practice is in order to be able to make sense of our emotions that are arising?
I think our bodies are magnificent and not used enough. So when there's an emotion, just hearing certain words, there's emotion that starts to contort our body. It lives in the cells. There are things are released in the brain, and it affects the body if we don't turn it down, or turn it off even, or ignore it. So I think it is important to use our bodies. I'm always moving, so I do that a lot. But there's so much wisdom in that. I can find the answers my brain's searching for when I move my body. This soma, this body, is so imperative to move. It stores trauma. It also stores joy. And so moving that, but making it healthy, lubricating that body wisdom by moving our body, whether through dance or just being expressive, using our hands and arms, and not limiting it to that, but facial expression. All of this somatic movement and possibility that lives in our body, it can be learned, but quite honestly, we get it naturally. So I'm interested in unlearning that shutdown.
Yeah, I was just going to say unlearning. So, just as we are in the process of unlearning, to return to that natural trust and self connection where we can express our emotions freely. Again, what are some of the emotions that people struggle with? I know shame and anger can be very difficult emotions. Can you speak a little bit about how we can access or start to develop courage to approach the more difficult emotions?
Yes, I think a decision to want more, to want an environment where you are not wearing masks, where you're not being honest with how you feel, whether in relationship with someone, uh, and personally, or with friends, or in the boardroom at work. It's there are ways to, of course, present it, and I'm not talking about any unhealthy expression, but what I'm talking about is honest expression, not in a way that damages oneself, but I think of the damage that is done to oneself if they're not able to find the words to say that makes me sad, or I am unhappy about something, or I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling anger about that. Just finding anger so right. I mean, anger only means that there's been some injustice. And so sometimes it's okay to say, no, this is not okay with me. I am not having that. And to feel like your voice matters. To be okay with speaking up. I'm not promoting road rage. Definitely not speaking of just acting out in anger and being destructive, but I'm talking about not pressing it down so that it starts to affect our bodies, and that this somatic movement starts to go on lockdown, which I personally have experienced and I see happening in so many others. And how when we find the courage to say yes to that thing that lives in us, yes to that voice, when I'm experiencing shame or anger, grief, when I'm those tend to be the emotions that get put away somehow. And that put away thing, it doesn't work. That trying to bury emotions is, you only bury them alive. So how about looking at this and finding the courage to speak to them?
Mm. Yes, we all know what it feels like when we are feeling emotionally overloaded or stuck, or in different uncomfortable positions in relation to our own emotion, and how that really affects us somatically. It's very debilitating and can be very, very crippling. So, as you're speaking about the ability to voice our experience, experience and to own it, and so that is an external action or an external manifestation of what we are experiencing. But what is if we turn the lens around, if we look at what is the simultaneous inner growth that is happening in order to enable that, because there is a quiet process. I would be very interested to listening to you and your thoughts on this.
What a great question. Before the external can happen, the internal work has to be done. And that can feel like a rock, something stuck, like a lump in our throat, or this ball of cable wires, or just something tumbled up and locked in the body. But I believe when it's given the attention it deserves, and when it is looked at kindly, with compassion, without shame, and just saying, wow, I have this, when being infinitely curious about what we're feeling, and in a combination of curious and gentle. So often We can be curious, but there's a lens of judgment around it. So what I desire is for that lens of judgment to relax, and that we are cradling whatever we're feeling. Wow, noticing, I felt after that conversation, I didn't feel so good. I felt misunderstood, or whatever it is. I felt like I wasn't seen or heard. And that made me, it caused me to feel some heartache here, or I feel like I'm shrinking. To be gentle around that, to just notice it and not begin to quiet and shush our own selves. I think by doing that, it's like just giving attention to something, some well-deserved attention to our bodies, to our feelings and emotions, being gentle with them, noticing them and finding them so right, adorable even. How can we be gentle with them? And if you go in with that approach, I think it gives that room a safe space to start to unwind. I think it gives it a safe space to just be seen and heard. And as a result, I think that creates space in our heart centers, in our bodies, in our being. I think gentleness begins internally. And as a result of being gentle with ourselves, I like to believe that we start to be gentle with others, more aware of what they may be experiencing, and creating kinder societies eventually.
That's a wonderful way of looking at it. And so as we become more attuned to ourselves, we are able to hear our surrounding more clearly, right? When the internal noise is just turned down a little bit. I find it so interesting, this different, maybe even we could say stages in our process of connecting with, allowing. You're saying being gentle. So I'm getting this sense of there's sweetness to the process of being patient. And I think that word again, allowing just what is, and then something is going to shift, right? So the moment so we can speak about blocks, right? And we can speak about emotional shutdown. And so that may, for some people, be the very starting point. So that can feel very far away from that authentic, honest, free place, which you have been speaking so beautifully about. So can you name just a couple of things? What could a person do just to start to first recognize that they may be in emotional shutdown, and how to take a first step out of that? And, you have already spoken a bit about it, but let's just spend a little more time on it because it is so useful.
It is so necessary. I think it all begins with breath. This idea, the notion of slowing down, not rushing along, but noticing what has happened in our bodies. When there is an upset, an event has occurred, becoming very aware of how am I feeling? I love to ask myself this question, and it's not just a cursory question. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm great. I can do that, but that doesn't even feel good to me. I ask myself this question before I get out of bed each day. How am I feeling today? Or how am I feeling about that meeting I need to go to? That thing I need to do today, my to-do list. Am I feeling overwhelmed? Okay. What can I do about this overwhelm? Is there anything I can do to simplify it? I am taking care of me. I am being the loving mother, loving parent to my own emotions, being gentle with myself. What can I do later, as opposed to feeling I have to do it right now to help alleviate this overwhelmed feeling in my body? And if I can't do anything later, how can I make any adjustments so that it feels good to me to approach the task that I have to do? Maybe that's eating something really nourishing and healthy. Maybe that's starting the day with a short meditation so that I can get to the work. Maybe it's having someone hold space for me, or someone who can be my buddy, where I say, I need 30 minutes to work on this project. Can you check in with me at the end of 30 minutes? You're doing things that take care of you. You're putting the importance of what is necessary so that you are taken care of. You're making space and room for yourself because you matter. And I think by shining light on that and making it primary in your life, your own needs, I think that is one way of starting to notice how you're feeling about things. How now, what can I do next? And just speaking to your to-do list very gently, speaking to your capacity to deal with your day gently. I'm a big fan of that word. I use it, and I don't think I can overuse it. Can I be more gentle with myself right now? What would give me the greatest ease in this moment? And to really attend to that.
Yeah, and gentleness and ease are such deeply rooted somatic principles that naturally just inform us about our somatic state, like our somatic experience and the present moment. And hearing you speak about these things really reminds me of the simplicity of just shifting our attention, of just having trust to that it's okay to self-care in this moment. If I am on overload, if I'm not coping with the demands of the present moment, okay, I have the resources to somehow adjust even a little bit, connecting with my breath or just creating space somehow. So I think that is such a very important point which you just made, to self-care and to create space. I think to give validation to that need is so at the heart of what somatics can yield for us in everyday life, because we all have had those moments of overload and overwhelm. And so that skill, to have that skill and to know that we have that skill is such it's such a safety for me personally, that I didn't always have it. I developed it over the years. I used to be able to get very stressed about things and get overwhelmed and overloaded. And then with time, I developed this skill to, okay, wow, I'm starting to get stressed. Let's just take a moment here and change a few things, and so that I don't push myself over the edge. And we're all going to be having situations in our lives where we're going to be having a lot of demand on our energy or time or capacity. So I know you work in many different ways in order to support people to create this level of self-connection, this self-trust, maybe we could even call it. Mm-hmm. And so could you speak a bit more about what are the ways you are working with people to build this kind of emotional resilience or this self-trust or self-connection?
I have created something called the emotional tour. I call it an emotional tour because myself or one of my teachers are their tour guide. And the tour promises that we get stuck in no one emotion, but we go there and we experience it. That we give sound and voice and movement to those real emotions. And they're depending on the workshop or the class, there's different groupings of emotions that will move. But joy, grief, rage, confidence, desire, flirt. There's a wide array of emotions that we can just play in. And I like to think of it as like an emotional gym. We want to all show up, develop, but we can't. That's not how you show up at the gym. You have to work at it and be patient and keep growing and showing up. So what I do is I create these containers that I love so much, where we get to play in this arena of expression and sounding emotions. I think, at least for me, when I created this body of work, it was because I found myself living what I call an emotionally half-assed life. And I could see it happening all over the place because it's what's acceptable. And I just thought, it's not the kind of vibrant I want to be. And so that's how this work was created. And how it has made it easy, maybe not always initially, but certainly over time, for people to just start to be more expressive. They learn to breathe deeper. They learn to just physically take up more space that they're in, as opposed to living sort of sideways and tight, as if we were girdled emotionally. So this work just peels back the layers, using live African drums to help relax the nervous system, so that we can be more of ourselves, be more in that alive primal state, and to stand in that fully seen in a community of like-minded people, so that we can go out of that classroom into the world and say yes to being emotional beings, and imagining how that kind of living affects the spaces that we go to when we're not in the classroom. It's been positive and wonderful.
Yeah, you are speaking about being witnessed in your emotional expression. And when I was in my early 20s, I had the opportunity to get to know my own emotions better. And I did exactly that, getting to try on, like the same way I would go to a shop and try on different clothes, a jacket, a dress. I got to really connect with anger, with grief, with joy, with you're calling it flirt. All these different expressions. And it was so important for me, in order to, like what you're saying, to be witnessed in it, and also to give myself permission to actually access that part of the emotional spread or sheet, So, and then you are when you are witnessed in your emotions, and then you are saying, then we can take it into our life. So I think that is such a powerful reminder that with all different practices, what we have, we can break it down, we can build skill, we can become more confident in our ability to handle whatever it is. In this case, it is emotional expression and self-connection, and then allow it to translate into the rest of our lives. So I think it's very much overlooked, our emotional intelligence, our skill, and how that is such a visceral, such a fundamental somatic experience of sensations that we can learn to track. And so it's really listening to you and sensing where you're coming from really puts me in contact with the richness and the effortlessness of that journey. So can you describe a little more about how, again, we can trust ourselves? So when we go into the world, what are some of the challenges that we may encounter? Because as we know, it may not always be smooth straight away. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, going into the world and being expressive takes courage. It takes a feeling so right with ourselves. And that's why I love the idea of safe containers where you get to be witnessed. That getting to be witnessed, you don't heal. the when we are upset, when we are grieving or angry, often people want to isolate. We heal by being in community and being witnessed. So when in a classroom or a workshop where this can be seen, where we can be seen and celebrated and expressive, and where it can be messy, as opposed to a clinical. You can't have a clinical emotional experience. It just doesn't work. When you need to just kind of bend your knees and make some noise and growl a little bit. So I think doing that, and that's what I so love about the work I do, and why I use those drums, is because it's getting that into the cells. It is getting that into the somatic body. It is moving in ways that sort of on a guttural level. You're outing something or connecting with something. And so when that rightness lives in our bodies, now we can go out. And if you try to then do something or connect with another and it's not genuine, if you're not being honest with yourself, it doesn't feel good in the body. It never did, but now you're more aware of it. And as a result of that, what I've noticed is people are now trying to find ways of a different kind of connection together, find ways of expressing, finding the words to say, I'd like to do this a different way. I'd like to have that hard conversation. They're able to just be, or a parent can now, rather than shut their child down, say, wow, my child is hurting right now or angry. And rather than shame that learned behavior down, how about I see the beauty in that? Let's explore the injustices, and is there some way we can do something about it? That's what I'm talking about by taking it out into our spaces and classrooms and in lives. You're just out into the world. It does require courage, and we're worth it. I believe everyone's worth it. And so, and I want to have people feel completely supported at being more expressive. And I think that that's how they can go out into the world, by being in containers where they get to find that self, find their expression celebrated, or when they're giving themselves time privately and noticing how they're feeling. I feel that these are tiny baby steps towards more beautiful, healthier expression.
Thank you for that, Bernadette. And I wonder if you would guide us through an exploration of what we have been speaking about, or movement of some sort. What do you have in mind?
I would. I'd love to do that. Let's go on a mini emotional tour. Grab 3 emotions. These things I like to have involvement with, so I'm going to act them out and trust that the audience will just decide to, whether sitting in their chairs or getting up and standing, that they'll just join in. But just for a moment, I'd like to think about a pot, a big, giant pot in front of us. I'm going to adjust my camera a little bit so I can back up. I'd like to imagine this a giant pot, and that pot is bubbling over with joy. And what would it look like? Give the joy color? It's so important to start to think about how this looks. So think of how joy feels in the body. For me, it's screaming yellow right now. It just feels like that. So that's the color in my pot. And I start to imagine dipping my fingers in them and allowing my fingers to start to move as if they are experiencing exquisite joy. And the thing about joy is it's not like being happy. It is different. Joy is ecstatic, and allowing that ecstatic feeling to be in my body and to not shut that down and allow that my fingers that are dipping into that pot to now start to feel like that is working up my arms and into my shoulders. And how does joy move in my shoulders and spine? And I start to wiggle here. You can't see my whole body, but I'm doing this happy puppy thing down below. Feet start to move and giving joy sound, allowing the head and face and expressions to come into this whole somatic being and starting to fill my body up with joy. In the classroom, we'd be running around and dancing and whatever felt good, but giving it sound and just being so filled with joy. And then pressing into our bodies like, joy is my birthright. Joy is my birthright. And pressing that in to the body, pressing it, reminding, tapping helps us remember. Tapping, joy is my birthright. Right into the body. The next stop on the emotional tour would be grief. Nobody wants to experience grief, but I believe our emotions are like weather. That sometimes there's bright sunny days and that could be like joy. And sometimes there's cloudy days, grief. And noticing in the body, where do you feel that? Allowing your hand to go there. For me, right now, it's in my heart. I am aware that it is heavy and I give it a color. It's a dark gray right now, murky. And I think of how my body feels. No one wants to experience grief. No one's asking for a double dose of this, but sometimes the weather changes and it's there. And rather than shame this emotion, I am comforted by knowing that grief is just love with nowhere to go. And how beautiful my heart is that I love something or someone. I am gentle with this emotion. I ask grief, how much time does it need? As opposed to shaming it and putting it away and having no time for it. Making time for the grief. Telling the grief, I see you. You matter. After this emotional tour stop, and I just stay in it for a few minutes, but I am noticing what I might be feeling. After some emotions, I encourage shaking. And I really think that shake has to match the feeling you might have felt in your body. And allowing that shake to come out through sound, giving it, shaking to reset the nervous system. Animals do it naturally. We do it naturally. Shaking our body, waking up, telling it is safe, it is okay. I ask myself that on the next tour stop, how does rage feel in my body? Is there anger? Is there anger? Finding that, allowing my hand to go there, and what is the thing, the name, the person, the circumstance, the politician, whatever it is, that needs to be said? What happens to our bodies if we don't give it sound, give it words, give it movement, give it attention? It's okay to want to scream into a pillow or do something, but whatever it is, find it so right so that we can get through this thing, because I don't believe we get over things. I believe we get through them by going right into it. Finding it, our bodies are housing it anyway. So how about shine some light on it giving anger sound, if there's something that needs to be said in a safe way and taking care of yourself and others, can you get that out? Do you need to say that thing? Right now, for me, it's injustice. It's racism. I think it's ugly and it bothers me. And it's okay for me to say that thing. I don't want to swallow that because I can't create a better society by swallowing that and walking around with that anger. So I want to give it word. I want to give it acknowledgement. After this emotional tour stop, I would shake again. Shaking to reset the nervous system because it is so important and our bodies store this. And my body needs to feel safe and okay because it is. And then I like to go into confidence. I start to notice where I feel it in my body, like what has happened. I notice that for me, I feel it in my spine. I feel a coolness on my shoulders. I am noticing what happens in my body. I notice that I stand more erect, that my direction of my gaze is more sharp. I like this feeling. It feels really good. I love the way this looks on me and on everyone else. Finding myself so right in this, taking confidence for a walk around the room and noticing how it feels in my body. Staying in that place. This is not an emotion I'm going to shake off. I want to hold on to that because it feels really good. These are some of the tour stops on the emotional tour. And I'm so happy to have an opportunity to share them here with you. Thank you. And if you can imagine all of those things happen in my classrooms too, African drums playing to each of those emotions so that whether we're actually moving it, sounding it, or just listening, we're getting the medicine. Thank you.
Practice and surprise how easy it can be to be in the totality of a certain emotion. So that really brought richness. Thank you. And also, I was surprised by how clear the sensations were and how easy it was to actually drop into each emotion with such clarity. So thank you for that, Bernadette.
You.
So we are coming towards the end of our session now. And I just wonder if you have a closing statement to the listeners. What would that be?
Closing statement would be to find safe spaces where your emotional expression is celebrated because it is needed. It is making us sick as a society not to be emotionally expressed. I look forward to a world where expression is happening and being celebrated, just like weather. Today it's raining, tomorrow it might snow. None of it lasts forever. I personally believe there are no good, bad, light, or dark emotions, only emotions that need to be fully expressed. So it is my desire that I continue to express my emotions, that you will, and that more and more people are going to be emotionally expressed beings.
And Bernadette, as you have offered a bonus to this summit, which is a part of the upgrade package, can you just very short tell us what that is?
Yeah, this is now, I think there's so much grief being had. And so I speak in this upgrade, we're talking about grief. We're going there, and we're not going there with any shame, any worry. It's how to be this loving, kind parent to grief that might live in our body. And in this video and PDF download, it's a guide to help deal with grief very tenderly, to acknowledge it. So I'm so happy to offer this.
So important, Bernadette. And please state your website so that the listeners know where to find you.
They can find me at theemotionalinstitute.com. I'm looking forward to having them there.
And you have another website as well, right?
I do. Thank you. It is LiveFemme. I spell that LIVEFEMME.com.
Thank you for that. Bernadette, it was wonderful to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. What a pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who has been listening for this wonderful session with Bernadette Pleasant. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Somatic Movement Summit, brought to you by the Shift Network. To learn more, visit somaticmovementsummit.com. To learn more about our global programs, to support you in waking up in all the areas of your life and taking inspired action, visit theshiftnetwork.com. Thank you again for joining us and for sharing this embodied path to vitality and wholeness with your friends and family.